At family dinner, my wife's sister said, "She could have done so much better than him," while gesturing at me. I smiled and said, "Probably." Then I withdrew my $180K investment from their business, and the bankruptcy filing came exactly 92 days later. I need to get this off my chest because the fallout has been absolutely nuclear. I'm 38, married to Jenna for 8 years, and I'm an accountant who does freelance consulting. Not glamorous, but I pull in $140,000 annually, and I'm damn good at what I do. Jenna's sister Deirdre, 41, has always had this superiority complex about me. She's married to Garrett, 43, who inherited his father's import-export business dealing with specialty fabrics. They live in this fake luxury bubble. Leased BMW, designer everything, constantly posting about their blessed life. Here's what nobody knew until that dinner. 3 years ago, Garrett's business was hemorrhaging cash. Chinese suppliers demanding payment up front. Buyers delaying payments for months. Classic cash flow squeeze that kills businesses overnight. They needed a $180,000 capital injection within 30 days, or they'd lose their 3 biggest contracts worth $2.8 million annually. Jenna begged me to help. "They're family," she kept saying. I had just exited a software startup. Nothing huge, but a solid 6-figure payout of $220,000 after taxes. Against every business instinct I had, I agreed to invest. But here's the key. I insisted on proper contracts, lawyers, everything documented. I took a 30% stake as a silent partner with quarterly profit distributions and a 90-day exit clause with full repayment plus accumulated interest if I wanted out. My $180,000 saved their business completely. They went from bankruptcy bound to profitable within 6 months. I've been getting my quarterly distributions like clockwork, usually around $8,000 to $12,000 per quarter. Everyone was happy, or so I thought. That dinner 2 weeks ago was supposed to be a celebration for their son, Braden's 16th birthday. Nice evening, until Deirdre hit her 3rd glass of wine and started reminiscing about how Jenna was always the pretty one, who could have married that surgeon from college or that investment banker who was obsessed with her. Then she looks directly at me and says, "I mean, she could have done so much better than, well, you know." Gestures dismissively at me. "An accountant? Really?" She settled hard. Dead silence. Jenna's face went crimson. Garrett suddenly found his plate fascinating. Their kids, Braden and 14-year-old daughter Kendra, looked mortified. I just smiled calmly and replied, "Probably, Deirdre. At least you're honest about it." Finished dinner quietly, drove home while Jenna apologized nonstop. The next morning, I called my lawyer Patricia Chen at 8 a.m. sharp. By noon, I'd submitted formal notice of my intent to exit the partnership and demanded full repayment of my investment. The contract I'd insisted on 3 years ago was ironclad. 90 days notice and complete buyout of $180,000 plus accumulated interest at 3% annually, bringing the total to $194,750. Garrett called within 2 hours, pure panic in his voice. "Dude, what's this about? We can't just come up with $195K. That's our entire emergency fund plus some." "Then you better figure it out. You have 90 days. "Is this about what Deirdre said? She was drunk. She didn't mean it." "My decision is final. See you at the buyout meeting." That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, it's been a masterclass in strategic documentation and consequence management. The entitlement reached new heights immediately. First came the emotional manipulation. Deirdre called Jenna crying about how I was destroying their lives over a drunken comment. Jenna held firm, proud of her, and said it was my investment, my choice. Then came the family meeting ambush. They showed up at our house the following Sunday expecting lunch. But it was intervention-style setup with Garrett, Deirdre, and even their kids. Deirdre's daughter Kendra was clearly coached to cry about losing her private school that costs $18,000 annually. Their son Braden talked about his college prospects being ruined. Garrett presented this whole PowerPoint about liquidating assets, potentially losing their $750,000 house. The works. My response was simple. "Sounds like you should have thought about that before insulting your primary investor." Deirdre lost it. It was a joke. You're really this sensitive? What kind of man ruins a family over hurt feelings? The kind who doesn't need to subsidize people who think he's beneath them. Here's where it got interesting. Garrett let slip they had already been shopping for loans. Nobody would touch them. Their personal credit is maxed from maintaining their lifestyle. The business real estate is already leveraged, and without my capital keeping things stable, banks saw them as high risk. Then Deirdre said something that sealed their fate. You know what? Fine. We don't need your money. Garrett's business survived before you. It'll survive after. You did us a favor. Now, I don't have to pretend to be grateful to you anymore. Garrett's face went white. Deirdre, shut up. No, I'm tired of acting like he's some savior. Anyone could have written a check. He got lucky with that startup exit. He's still just a boring accountant who lucked into my sister. I recorded that entire conversation on my phone. One-party consent state. Totally legal. Sent it immediately to my lawyer with a note. Please ensure this buyout is airtight. They tried a new approach the following week. Social media manipulation. Started posting about family betrayal and money-corrupting people. Some of their friends began messaging me about doing the right thing and being the bigger person. My favorite was from Deirdre's book club friend. Real men don't destroy families over words. Grow up. I responded to exactly none of them, but I documented everything. Screenshots, saved voicemails, the works. The 90-day deadline approached like a freight train. With 60 days left, I was hearing through Jenna, who completely supports my decision but still talks to her mom, that they were scrambling. Garrett was desperately trying to find another investor, but nobody wanted in. The business model only works with significant capital reserves, and without my stake, they looked like a house of cards waiting to collapse. I ran into Deirdre at the grocery store during this period. She walked right up to me. You won, happy, you're destroying my children's futures because your ego got bruised. No, I'm collecting my legal investment. What you do with your business after that is your problem. You're pathetic. This is why Jenna should have chosen better. And yet she chose me, the pathetic accountant whose money you were happy to take. She stormed off, but the entitlement was breathtaking. They genuinely thought my money was somehow theirs by default. The desperation turned into pure insanity with 30 days left. Garrett tried to sell partial stakes to other investors. But here's the beautiful part. My contract includes right of first refusal on any sale. Every potential investor who did due diligence discovered I was leaving and ran. Nobody wants to get involved in family business drama where the stable money is walking out. Deirdre attempted financial manipulation through their mother. She convinced this sweet 68-year-old woman, who's always been kind to me, to call in tears. I don't understand why you're doing this. Deirdre made a mistake. Can't you forgive family? I gently explained this was business, not personal. Then she dropped the bomb. Deirdre says if you don't stop this, I might have to sell my house to help them. I immediately called Jenna. Turns out Deirdre had been guilt-tripping their mother, suggesting she take out a mortgage on her paid-off $400,000 house to save the family business. Jenna went nuclear on her sister. Their relationship is basically over now. 2 weeks before the deadline, things got legally interesting. I received a letter from some ambulance-chasing lawyer claiming I was in breach of fiduciary duty as a partner and that my withdrawal was designed to intentionally harm the business. They threatened to sue for damages. My lawyer literally laughed, sent back a response with copies of the contract showing my legal right to exit, documentation proving I'd never been involved in operations, the recording of Deirdre saying they don't need my money, and a counter threat that any frivolous lawsuit would be met with aggressive legal response. Haven't heard from that lawyer since. 1 week before, the deadline was peak desperation. Garrett showed up at my office, not threatening, just completely defeated. Look, man to man, we're gonna lose everything. The house, the business, everything. My kids, I can't provide for them. You have a profitable business. Figure it out. We used the profits to expand, bought new equipment, hired more people. We assumed your capital was stable. You assumed wrong, that's why contracts exist. Then he tried the brotherhood angle. Come on, we're family. Think about your nephew and niece. I am thinking about them. I'm thinking about how their mother thought it was appropriate to humiliate me in front of them. What lesson does it teach if there are no consequences? He left with slumped shoulders. I almost felt bad. Almost. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Garrett's business partner, Rick, who owns 20% of the company, reached out to me with an unexpected proposition. He wanted to buy my 30% stake for $200,000, more than I was owed. I was immediately suspicious, so I did some digging through business records and mutual contacts. Turns out Rick had been planning this move for months. He knew Garrett and Deirdre were living beyond their means and couldn't handle a major capital withdrawal. He'd been quietly preparing to take majority control of the company. If I sold to him, he'd own 50% and could push them out entirely. Rick and I met for coffee 3 days before my deadline. They've been bleeding the company dry, he explained, showing me documented evidence. Expensive business trips that were actually vacations, Deirdre on payroll as a marketing consultant despite doing nothing, company credit cards for personal expenses. I've been documenting everything for 2 years. Why didn't you act sooner? I needed the right moment. You withdrawing gave me the opening I needed. They can't buy you out, but I can. And then I control the board. It was ruthless. It was cold. It was exactly what they deserved. I'll need to review this with my lawyer, I said. Of course, but decide fast. My offer expires when your 90-day notice does. The beautiful part. If I took Rick's deal, Garrett would lose control of his father's company, the thing that made him feel important and successful. And it was completely legal. Deirdre still didn't know about Rick's offer. She was frantically trying to secure hard money loans at insane interest rates. Garrett was calling suppliers begging them to extend credit or invest. Everyone was saying no. Their 16-year-old son, Braden, reached out to me directly during this time. Despite his parents, he seemed like a decent kid. He called my office and asked to speak with me. Uncle, I know Mom was wrong, but could you maybe give us more time, like 6 months instead of 3? Your parents had 3 years to treat me with basic respect. They chose not to. This is going to ruin my life too. No, it'll change it. There's a difference. You'll adapt. He hung up on me. Can't blame him. Jenna asked me what I was going to do about Rick's offer. I told her honestly I was taking it. The extra $5,250 would cover my legal fees, and knowing Garrett would lose the business entirely felt like poetic justice. Deirdre wanted to act like I was beneath her while taking my money. Now she'd see what happens when the boring accountant decides he's done being disrespected. 2 days before the deadline, I officially accepted Rick's offer. Papers were signed at my lawyer's office, money transferred to my account. The day of the 90-day deadline was spectacular. Garrett called me 18 times starting at 6 a.m. Deirdre sent walls of texts to both me and Jenna. They'd scraped together $140,000, borrowed from friends, maxed out credit cards, even got their church involved, still $54,750 short. Their last-ditch effort was showing up at our house at 10 p.m. with a cashier's check for $140,000 and a promissory note for the rest. Garrett looked like he'd aged 5 years and 3 months. Please, this is everything we have. Take it and give us 6 months for the rest. My deal with Rick closed this morning. That's when Deirdre learned about Rick. The look on her face was pure shock. Rick bought you out for more than you're owed? She whirled on Garrett. You said Rick was on our side? Garrett just stared at the ground. He knew it was over. The morning after the deadline, Rick immediately called a board meeting and presented his evidence of financial mismanagement, voted Deirdre off the payroll, and reduced Garrett to a salaried employee with no decision-making power. Garrett could stay and work for Rick, or leave and try to start over at 43 with no capital and burn bridges everywhere. His pride made the choice. He left within a week. Within a month, they'd sold their house, barely breaking even after mortgage payments and realtor fees, pulled their kids from private school. Deirdre got a job at a marketing firm making $45,000 a year. Garrett became a sales manager for a textile company making $65,000 annually. Combined, they're making maybe half what they used to pull from the business. The bankruptcy filing came exactly 3 months after they lost the business income. Without that steady cash flow, and with all the personal debt they had accumulated, maintaining their lifestyle, they couldn't keep up with payments. Chapter 7, fresh start, but their credit is destroyed for the next decade. Here's an interesting twist, though. Braden, their son, reached out to me 6 months later wanting to learn about financial planning. The kid got a part-time job at a local restaurant, saving everything, determined not to end up like his parents. I agreed to mentor him over coffee once a month. Deirdre is furious about it, but she can't legally stop a 16-year-old from meeting with his uncle. Jenna's relationship with her sister is permanently done. Their mother finally understood what really happened when she saw the bankruptcy filing and learned about Deirdre's lies about me being controlling. She apologized to me for initially taking Deirdre's side, and now only speaks to Deirdre when absolutely necessary. I ran into Garrett at a coffee shop 6 months after everything concluded. He looked exhausted, but cleaner somehow. "Rick's turning the company into something Dad would have hated," he said. "All automation and cost cutting. But profitable? Yeah, very profitable, more than we ever managed." "Then Rick's a better businessman than you were." He stared at his coffee. "Deirdre still thinks you overreacted. And you? I think we got exactly what we deserved. We bit the hand that fed us." He paused. "I never properly thanked you for that investment 3 years ago. It saved us then. We just forgot that." "You didn't forget. You just thought you didn't need to remember." He nodded and we parted ways. That was the last time I spoke to him. Deirdre still posts on social media about rising from adversity and learning who real family is. The comments are supportive from people who don't know the whole story. The people who do know the truth have distanced themselves from her completely. Jenna asked me last month if I had any regrets. "None," I told her. "They showed me who they really were. I just showed them what that costs." The funniest part. My consulting business has exploded since this happened. Word travels fast in business circles, and it turns out business owners respect someone who enforces contracts and doesn't let emotion override good business sense. I've gotten 3 major clients who specifically said they wanted someone who handles business like business. My annual income has increased to $185,000. Deirdre was right about one thing. Jenna probably could have married that surgeon or investment banker, but she married me, the boring accountant who understands the value of respect, contracts, and consequences. And honestly, that's been more than enough. The total financial impact tells the whole story. My strategic exit cost them everything. $750,000 house equity, $40,000 to $48,000 in annual business distributions, their children's $18,000 private school tuition, and about $200,000 in accumulated debt they couldn't pay. Meanwhile, I walked away with $200,000 from the sale to Rick, new clients worth $45,000 in additional annual income, and the satisfaction of knowing that respect isn't negotiable. As for current status, Jenna and I are stronger than ever, and recently bought a larger house with the proceeds from my business sale. Deirdre and Garrett are still struggling financially, but slowly rebuilding. Their kids are adapting well. Braden is thriving with his new understanding of money management, and Kendra has actually excelled in public school. Rick's company is more profitable than ever. And me. I sleep perfectly well at night, knowing that sometimes the most expensive lesson is the one that finally teaches respect. Sometimes the best lesson you can teach someone is that actions have consequences, and sometimes the most expensive lesson is the one that finally sticks.